So many of you will remember that I've been giving good news about declining COVID cases on the show in the United States, dating back to really the first few days of September. I've also been saying since late October that decline is starting to slow down. And then we got to, well, the cases are now flat. They're no longer declining. We don't know if this is an inflection point and cases will start going back up, or if they'll stay flat, or if they'll continue on down. We don't know what will happen heading into winter. We now have a modest but clear trend, which is that cases in the United States are going back up. And in fact, they've been on the upswing since roughly Halloween, so close to a couple of weeks. And cases are now up in the United States, just shy of about 10% per day. We had gotten down to 71,000 cases a day, which is crazy to think that, wow, we had a huge decline down to 71,000 cases a day. That is now back up to 77,000 cases a day. And this is really, really not good. Now, if we were at the point where cases no longer meant deaths, either because enough vaccination has taken place where most folks are protected against serious illness and death, or because of a less deadly strain that has evolved, this wouldn't be as bad. But those things haven't happened yet. And so far, deaths have been following cases by about 3 to 4 weeks. And just as we saw cases stop their decline 3 to 4 weeks ago, deaths are now flat. Deaths are no longer declining. They're stuck at about 1,100 COVID deaths per day in the United States. So there is every possibility that we are at the beginning of a new spike and a potentially very ugly winter. Now, maybe not. Maybe not. We don't really know yet, but the case increase has started and the death decline has stopped. Now, often, as we've seen throughout the pandemic, what happens in the United States follows what happens in other parts of the world. Part of the reason for that is that many of the spikes are caused by variants, which we first observe in other parts of the world, like Europe. So far, the global numbers are not looking particularly auspicious for the United States over the next 3 months. Cases around the world are up even more than in the United States. Globally, cases had bottomed back, they'd bottomed out at 403,000 cases a day. Globally, cases are now up to 472,000 cases a day. So while in the US, cases are up 9 or 10%, globally, cases are up about 17%. That's not a great signal for what is to come here. As far as global deaths, those are slightly up. Global deaths had bottomed out around 6,600 a day. Deaths are now back up to 7,100 a day around the world. That's an increase of about 6 or 7%. So if there is any good news to point to, and even this, you'll see why it's not even that great, we can point to, hey, vaccinations every day are now climbing in the United States. They're not incredible numbers. Looking at the graph on the screen, if you're watching today, you might see that daily vaccinations really bottomed out in mid-July. And then as Delta surged and discussion of Delta surged, vaccinations also started to increase. In late July, we were down to about 550,000 doses a day. That has climbed and climbed, almost tripling. And we're now doing, over the last week, about 1.3 million doses per day. Unfortunately, and this is just horrible, the not so good thing is that the increased doses per day are significantly driven by people who already have 2 doses getting a 3rd dose. So you're not vaccinating that many new people. If you ask the question, how many new people are getting vaccinated each day, it might only be a couple 100,000 to maybe 300,000. Sadly, I mean, it's good that people are getting 3rd doses and more protection, but a huge portion of the daily doses today are people getting a 3rd dose. Good for those people, not so good for the population at large. Now that 5 to 11-year-olds can start to get vaccinated in the U.S., we do expect the number of kids with 1 dose in that age group to be at roughly 1 million right now. About 1 million kids have already gotten vaccinated. That's good, but the misinformation continues to kill people. We have a report from Colorado, from CBS Denver, which says that according to a Colorado ICU nurse, there are many COVID patients. They're in the ICU with COVID. They don't believe the virus is real. They believe the hospital made them sick. And in some cases, they call the nurses murderers. So that's very bad. We will see what things look like by Thanksgiving. I've started to get questions from some of you about what is my Thanksgiving plan from the standpoint of medical, from the standpoint of COVID. I'm going to be doing a testing Thanksgiving. So it's going to be maybe outdoor, maybe indoor, depending on the weather. Everybody will be tested. And everybody will be vaccinated and tested. When we interviewed Vincent Racaniello from Columbia University, and I said to him, sir, is this foolproof? If people get a test right as they're going in, is there any way you might be incubating and contagious but negative? And he basically said, if you're using the test for a few hour gathering, it's essentially foolproof in the sense that, this was what he said, if you are incubating the virus and you don't yet have symptoms and you test negative, you're almost certainly not contagious for the next few hours. So what you wouldn't want to do, because of this possibility that you've been infected, you're incubating, but you don't yet test positive, don't use a test as justification to hang out for a week without doing any more testing, because then you might turn positive and turn contagious. But if you're doing a few hour gathering, Vincent Racaniello was confident that if everybody has a negative test, everybody's going to be not contagious, at least for a few hours. So that's my plan for Thanksgiving. I'm curious to hear about yours. One of our sponsors today is Helix Sleep, and it's a sponsor I'm thrilled about because I sleep on a Helix mattress at home, and it's just the perfect mattress. One of the best things about Helix is you don't have to guess which mattress do I need, which one will be good for me. You take their famous sleep quiz on their website, you tell them your body type, your sleeping position, your back pain issues you might have, and they will pair you with a mattress that will be perfect for you. I took the sleep quiz. The mattress they suggested was exactly what I needed. I often get too hot at night. The mattress keeps me cool. It's not too soft. It's not too firm. The texture is right. And I've just been getting way better sleep. You only buy a mattress every decade or so. Don't get stuck with something that's not perfect for you. And all Helix mattresses come with a 10-year warranty, and they'll even come to your house and pick it up within 100 days if you don't love it. But I think you will. All of my viewers will get up to $200 off your order, and you'll get 2 super premium pillows for free when you go to the link right underneath this video.